people like Nigel Farage. I will make Britain fit for the British people. And you know what he means by that. I will make America great again, Donald Trump. And we get similar politics coming in Poland, Hungary, France, Italy, Spain, across Europe. And where you did have people like Hutton, um, preaching this idea that Anglo-Saxon capitalism, i.e. neoliberalism, was brutal and savage, but Europe represents this lovely third way, this cuddly middle between the extremes of socialism and well, look at the latest round of European parliamentary elections to see which way the wind is blowing. Now, of course, in real terms, these European elections are symbolic. The European Parliament doesn't have real power. It has some powers, but it isn't the decisive force. The decisive force still is the states, the individual nation state or multinational state, call it whatever you will, you know what I'm talking about. That is clearly the situation. But in terms of judging political direction, um, uh, these elections are clearly significant. So yeah, it might be that we end up with a new set of commissioners in Brussels, stroke Strasbourg. That's a minor issue. More to the point is what's going on in the nation states themselves, and certainly what these elections show, if you needed to be shown it, and that is the chances of an ever closer union in the EU. The chances of that are zilch. That's dead. That was certainly killed off by the United States and the Ukraine war, making Germany and France pay the price for that war. But it's also being killed off by the shift to the right in Europe, to the politics of narrow nationalism, xenophobia, that have won support across the board, but not least in the working class. And indeed, if you look across Europe, you can make a case that class politics exists in a residual sense in terms of working class people abstaining or whatever it is. But no, what we've seen is a shift from any sort of class politics to another sort of politics. That doesn't mean that class is an irrelevance or economic exploitation doesn't take place, or the capitalist class is an irrelevance. And no, all of that matters. All of that generates politics. But what we've got is radically false consciousness in the working class. You could say that official communism and social democracy were false consciousness, but the Brothers of Italy, Alternative for Germany, National Rally, this is radically false class consciousness, as is Trumpism and the appeal to white working class people in America of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Okay, so what have been the results? France, 31% for National Rally, Germany, 16% for Alternative, 29% for the Brotherhood or Brothers of Italy. Remember, this is with the Prime Minister actually being for that. That was the lead party. Similar picture in the Netherlands, similar picture in Poland, in Austria, the Freedom Party, 29%, the leading party in the European elections. And of course, in France, what we have is Macron maybe going for a clever move. Who knows? Maybe he isn't just thinking about what's going to happen in these assembly elections, but in the next, after the next. Maybe he thinks that long term. I don't know. Presidential elections, he has to step down after he finishes this term, 2 terms, and you're out. But just like in the United States, you can run for a third time. I think that's either law or convention. I'm not sure. Someone will tell me. I think it's the law. Either way, maybe he's thinking, okay, I lose this assembly election. I have to have Marine Le Pen's number 2 as my prime minister. I will cohabit with that prime minister, and maybe I'll try to discredit National Rally in the meantime, ready for my successor in the next presidential election. He hopes that it won't be Marine Le Pen, but in order to run, just like Putin did the time after that. I don't know. Either way, the chances are that not only could you have, quite realistically, a national rally prime minister in a very short time, isn't it? After 2 rounds of assembly elections, you could conceivably have Marine Le Pen replacing Macron as president in the next presidential elections. So I think that's the line of travel in Europe. And the problem is with the left is it's too willing to vote for the lesser of two evils. And if you vote for the lesser of two evils, it's perfectly understandable why. Who would you prefer, Biden or Trump? I don't think they just put an equal sign between these two figures. Who would you prefer? Marine Le Pen or Macron? Well, I know who, I mean, didn't Trotsky say, well, what would you prefer to be, poisoned, by some, what do they call it? I'm trying to think, what's the poison? Anyway, rat poison that slowly kills you, or an axe that cleaves your head in two. Well, you go for the poison, don't you? Because you've got enough time to do something about it. But I don't think that's what life is. I think what the left needs to do is construct an alternative. And that isn't by seeking allies on the right, not the Greens, not the Labourites, not the so-called socialist or social democrats in Europe. What you need is a communist party that's a viable vehicle for an entirely different society, a communist party that has a communist strategy, which would at least say our decisive takeoff point is Europe. We are not going to pursue a national road to socialism. That's illusory. That's suicidal. No, we need an internationalist road. Last point on this. Socialist Worker describes some of these parties that I've spoken about as far right. Others it describes as fascist. I think that all the parties I've spoken about so far, I would describe as far right. I think designating them fascist is a big mistake. It entirely gets wrong what fascism was. If we leave it in terms of origins, there's a point to be made. So if we look at the origins of these parties, many of them, have their roots, not least Maloney's party in Italy. Of course, the origins is with the MSI, and back before that, Mussolini. You could say the same about National Rally. This is a party rooted in Vichy France, Action Français, the blue shirts, etc., etc., etc. But that would be the equivalent of looking at the CPB today, the Communist Party of Britain, the Morning Stars Party, and saying that this is a communist party. But the idea is risible. This isn't a communist party. It wouldn't possibly be allowed to affiliate, for example, to the Third International. The Third International would look at it and just tell it to, well, F off. You're not communists. You're not even centrist. You're not even pretending to be communist. Well, you got the word. That's true. Now, what we're actually dealing with the CPB isn't anything fundamentally different from George Galloway's party. It too believes in non-racist immigration controls. It believes in a national road. It wants to defend Britain's industries. No, it's not a communist party. Look at Italy. You know, it is the Democrat Party because it has its origins both in Christian democracy and official communism. Is that a communist party? Is that the equivalent of Bordiga's Communist Party? We'll leave aside his leftism. Of course not. The idea is nonsense. So we need to distinguish between origins. And if one wanted to point out to electors and in your propaganda or agitation the origins of such parties, I think that's perfectly valid. But this isn't the equivalent of Mussolini or Hitler, who came into power backed by the bourgeoisie in order to smash the organized working class. The organized working class, as I've said, in France, which posed a challenge to the bourgeois system in 36, right? That carried out the program that was in their heads of the Popular Front government, you know, in occupations and strikes that involved more than 1 million people, 1.5 million people, that panicked the bourgeoisie to such an extent that, as I said, when the Nazis came in the form of the German army, they welcomed Hitler into France. We're not in that situation today. We shouldn't expect the smashing of the revolutionary working class because of the reasons I've just said. The working class at the moment is declassed. It's dispersed. It still has trade union power to a minor degree, but clearly not to the degree of where it could cripple a country, or where big concessions would have to be given to it. After all, look at Keir Starmer, look at Sharon Graham complaining about the lack of concessions from Keir Starmer. Is she just about to organise a general strike and the occupation of factories? Or other sections of the working class just about to join her? No, at the very most, what we'll get is what we saw under the Tory party, and that is, in essence, protest strikes. One day here, another day there. You know, just like the junior doctors will be doing in the run-up to the general election. Not something that panics the state or panics the employers, basically to buy off the working class. That's simply not dealing with the world that we're living in at the moment, unfortunately. So I think it's wrong to talk about these parties in terms of fascism. I think it's worth our while sticking to our definition, the classic description of fascism given by Trotsky. Some of his best writings were on the rise of fascism in Germany, but also he dealt very well with the situation in France and Spain. You know, why Franco, for example, wasn't a fascist, but was a right-wing authoritarian army figure. Either way, I think we shouldn't describe what's post-fascist, ex-fascist as fascist. I think we need to stick to a scientific definition of fascism.